Good afternoon, Commissioner O'Brien. Thank you for taking time with us at Off the Block. I hope you have had a couple of days to relax, recover, get some sleep from that crazy weekend. And thank you for taking time with us as the selection chair to answer some of the questions that we have about the committee selections, and not only the teams that were invited, but also the seating as well. So first question, speaking of not getting much sleep, how long did you stay up and did you watch all of the Big West final?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to say thank you to you for having me on, and to Off the Block and all of our friends out there who are really promoting men's volleyball. So happy to have this conversation with you and go through our decisions. But to go back to answer your question is, I watched all the match. I think most of our committee did. And we went through committee reviews, all the data and all the results. So we wanted to make sure that we had a full and proper RPI breakdown after the match to make sure that we were painstakingly thorough.
So what time did you actually finalize the bracket?
The bracket was finalized by about 10 a.m. Eastern because we had to give Vinny enough time to get everything settled, and Ethan's got to do some work on the back end, and we got to get that broadcast out at 1. So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily a straight shot till 10 a.m., but there was a lot of starts and stops. And, we even had a committee member playing in the finals of the NPSF championship.
Since the Hawaii match started 10:30 my time, and that would be 12:30 your time or 1:30 in Muncie in the morning, is there anything we can do to have these matches start earlier?
I think the proposal for the committee is that we've asked the Big West to play their championship in New Jersey next year. And
nice.
we have a tentative agreement.
Nice.
No, in all seriousness, everybody has a chance to make their own finals time. And for the last 2 years, it's been in Hawaii. But I believe next year the Big West plays in Irvine. So
correct.
We'll have a 3-hour reprieve next year for that final.
So let's just jump into the biggest questions about the at-larges. So first off, obviously we know that Long Beach and UCLA were in consideration for at-large. And I assume Penn State, but what other teams were also under consideration for that at-large?
No, we had several teams that were under consideration, and the season was a long season. The conference tournaments felt like a long season, even over the course of either a week or 3 days or whatever it was. But in an effort not to leave anybody out, I can tell you that we had several teams that we were discussing. Some, when the final time came on the Saturday into Sunday, we were eliminated sooner than others, and others were right down to the wire. So all in all, without calling them out by name and leaving anybody out by mistake, we had several teams deserving of playing at least one more match this year. And unfortunately, our current format doesn't accommodate those teams.
I'll press you a little bit more on that, though. As I mentioned, I guess it would be safe to say that Long Beach was the number one at-large team, and obviously UCLA would be the second at-large team. Why did you pick UCLA over Penn State?
As we evaluate the whole body of work, the committee in no particular order sees head-to-head results versus the top 5, results versus the top 10, common opponents, RPI, overall record. And in a lot of categories, there were washes. Specifically, if you look at the RPI from 1 through 10 this year, they were separated by 0.05 of a point, 0.05 from 1 through 10. So when we compare and contrast all the teams, we're looking at all those possible categories as differentiators, and we felt that UCLA had one or two more than Penn State, and that gave them the nod.
Is it safe to say that you slotted the teams from best to worst 1 through 7, or did you make any accommodations to prevent certain matchups in the tournament?
No, with the size of our bracket, we don't have that luxury to do that. So we went through, and the first priority was to get the competitive balance, and we go through and put them in as much order as possible. At the end of the day, we realized that we had an NPSF matchup and on the second opening round game, and at that point there's really no effort we can do without breaking up the competitive balance that we had already worked for. So we went through and they landed as they landed.
Was there any consideration to not give Long Beach State the #1 overall seed because they did not win their own conference tournament?
There was consideration not to give Long Beach the #1 seed potentially, but it wasn't because of the conference tournament. The season is the season. You know, we take the consideration the entire body of work and not just the final results of the season. And like I said, we look at all those other categories, head to head, top 5, top 10. I mean, we had to go so deep because there were, you know, we were these proverbial splitting hairs. We were splitting hairs in a lot of categories. So for that one, Long Beach ended up on top, as you see.
I can't relate to splitting hairs, but that's the topic for another day.
I set that one right up there for you.
Nice. Given that Ball State has the second worst strength of schedule of any team in the tournament, why did the committee make Ball State the #2 overall seed?
To go into the seeding situation is just like the selection criteria. You know, we've got considerations for at-large teams. We've got considerations for the seeds, and strength of schedule is one of them. It is not necessarily the top one, the last one. And in fact, you know, we looked at them all equally and we went through and Ball State had what we felt like was the second best resume in the group. And, you know, in full disclosure, the determination of where Ball State was seated is a moment where I have to recuse myself as a representative from the MIVA because I don't have a specific school. I have to do that in discussions around MIVA the same way that, you know, Anthony had to do that when Princeton seating was being determined and Dave Matlin for the same for when Hawaii seats were determined. So it doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity to state the facts, and everybody on the committee is organized and is looking through the entire resume, and we see them. We put the facts on the table. We have a pre-discussion. Then when it's time to vote and to make those final choices, those folks have to recuse themselves.
Given that Penn State's RPI was #2 and UCLA's RPI was way down because of their trip to Georgia, how much weight did the committee put into RPI, and how about conference RPI?
You know, when I say the answer, and I don't want to sound like I'm just repeating myself, but the reality is, you know, in no particular order, head to head, results top 5, results top 10, common opponent. So RPI is one of the many criteria, the same with strength of schedule.
How close were you to putting another team in the playing match other than Princeton?
So if you allow me opportunity to clarify on that one, Jonathan, it's our first match is not a play-in game. It's an opening round match. And I think it's been referred to for a while as a play-in game because it has happened off-site. And when it's not in the same venue that we're going to play the championships, there's a regional parameter that has to be followed, similar to some of our other championships. The fact that we're all in one venue this weekend is fantastic. And it allowed us to keep that same, you know, that competitive bracket integrity that we talked about. So to go back to it, we evaluated every team. You know, Princeton had a resume, Pepperdine had a resume, North Greenville had a resume, and you see how they landed, and that's how we felt. It doesn't mean that it wasn't as close as the final at large. So everything was really taken into account.
I'm not sure this is the correct, or you're the correct person to ask, but I'll ask you anyways. What needs to happen to amend the criteria by which the committee uses to select teams or to seed teams?
I can give you what I understand of it to be, and I think this is the case. So that the committee has the published criteria, which we've talked about, and you guys have so openly put on your website throughout the decision process. The committee meets every June, and the committee, if the committee wanted to see some change, we'd have to put it through our committee, vote it through our committee, and then it goes to the competition oversight committee, which governs all the Division I and National Collegiate Sport Committee championships. So it would have to go and then get approved from there.
I have a couple more questions that probably are more along those lines about the oversight, with not just because of the controversy of Penn State being left out, but we could see additional AQs being doled out with the SIAC and the NEC. How quickly can we expect expansion in the NCAA tournament?
As far as expansion is concerned, you mentioned the SIAC is in their first full year. It takes 2 years at the moment under the current rules for them to be eligible for at-large. So we've got this is our 22 year, and then next year will be 23 season. So in 24 would be, I think, the first eligible championship for them to be at large. The committee approves the at-larges that are available, and then we go forward. One of the things the committee has been working on all year is this expansion. We're growing. The game is growing. We're lucky. We're fortunate that it's grown. Men's volleyball's gone through multiple stages of growth over the lifetime. Many years ago, I hate to say how many, but the Springfield team that I played for was competing with Penn State for the same automatic qualifier for a 14 tournament. And it wasn't until Moulton jumped in and offered a championship that the Division III schools even had a championship to play for. It wasn't even deemed a national championship, but we were super fortunate to have that championship experience. Men's volleyball at the Division III level grew, and about 10 or 12 years ago, they had sustained it long enough that Division III got a championship. And when Division III split off, the National Collegiate, which is affectionately known as Division I-II, was down to, I don't know, 30 something teams, and that was a scary time. So men's volleyball has grown at the Division III level. I think there are over 100 teams playing Division III volleyball, and now we're up to 56 teams at the National Collegiate. So we're growing at the Division I level. We're growing at the Division II level. We've got a lot of benefactors out there, a lot of good people to thank for that. And it goes back to the pioneers who pushed for this, and it goes to a lot of people like First Point and John and everybody who are doing great work there. And we've grown, and I think we've got an argument for expansion, and the committee is going to put something together. That said, it's got to get approved. It's got to go through the pipeline. We've got to see, all the other national collegiate championships are changing. The NCAA constitutions are changing. There's a lot happening all at once, but our committee is going to put forth a proposal. It'll hopefully, by the time we come through, we'll have an answer, but we don't know. Like women's beach volleyball has been deserving of expansion for their bracket for a couple of years, and even though they were deserving, it still took 2 or 3 years to get in. So we're hopeful. We all want it. I think the community wants it, and we'll just see what it takes to get through, and we'll do everything we can to help it.
And a final question for me, and more of a personal question, not speaking on behalf of the committee or anything. It seems like at least the last couple of cycles, the same schools get to host UCLA, Ohio State, Long Beach State. Would you like to see a little bit more variety in terms of the selection sites?
Yeah, the host bid cycle is kind of like a quad. It happens every 4 years or so, and the teams come out, and there are people who are good at hosting. There are venues that are more easy to get to or utilize. So for each cycle, the committee is always interested in receiving as many competitive bids as possible. But like the selection criteria, there's a lot that goes into it, from availability. George Mason was a new venue. We were all set to go there in 2020, and COVID happened, and that championship was canceled. And George Mason rebid in the next cycle. But unfortunately, they only had one available year to bid. And of course, we wanted to give them that chance to host. So that takes that year off the table. So if somebody else doesn't, it's availability for bid years, it's availability for who has the staff to run the championships. There's a lot that go into it. And, certainly we'd love to see it. Do you take it to a place that is underserved in the volleyball community to help grow the game there? There are a lot of question marks out there, but I think the next time this comes up, you may see some of the usual suspects, and maybe we see a few new venues, and we'll go into it make the decisions from that. But there's a whole group that organizes the bids, takes them in, and make sure that they're qualified, and then they come to the committee. And so it's similar to like our at-large choices. There's a lot of discussion, timing when, and of course we want to bring it throughout the country, and we want to have we want to have a good championship experience.
Well, thank you for taking time with us off the block. Well, have a fun championship next week, and look forward to seeing you in Westwood.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody on our committee. We've got 5 people who care a lot about the sport from a million different angles. I just want to assure everybody that the process is taking extremely seriously from start to finish. Every decision was made with deference to the teams and thorough evaluation. We know that every team, from coach to players to support staff, has put so much into the season. So none of this was easy. We all volunteered to do it. So we're not asking for anybody to cry for us, but the decisions were hard. And we think we've got a pretty competitive bracket out there, and we're really looking forward to the championship.